You're the latest one. Okay.
All right, we will go ahead and I'll call this meeting to order. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the August 9th, 2021 regular session of the Auburn City Council. We'll go ahead and start with roll call. Amy, if you'd please call roll.
Councilmember Berlant.
Here.
Amara.
Present.
Dowden Calvillo.
Present.
Riddell Harris.
Here.
And Mayor Spokley.
Here. Thank you very much. Next up will be our Pledge of Allegiance. If you will all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. The next item up is our agenda approval for this evening. This is a time set aside for the council members and or the members of the public to ask for removal, postponement, or a change to the listed sequence of an agenda item. The agenda will be approved by consensus of the council. Council, do we have any changes to the listing on our agenda this evening? Seeing none, any members of the public have any changes they'd like to see to our agenda this evening? All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and proceed as presented. Next up is our consent calendar. All matters listed under the consent calendar are considered to be routine in nature and will be approved by one blanket motion with a roll call vote. There will be no separate discussions of these items unless persons request specific items to be removed from the consent calendar for discussion and separate action. Any item removed will be considered after the motion to approve the consent calendar. Council members, any items anyone wants to see pulled? Seeing none, any members of the public have any consent calendar items they'd like to see pulled? All right, seeing none, I'll go ahead and bring it back to the council for a motion.
I'll move that we approve the consent calendar.
I'll second.
Thank you both. Amy, would you mind calling roll?
Councilmember Berlant.
Aye.
Amara.
Yes.
Dowden Calvillo.
Aye.
Riddell Harris.
Aye.
And Mayor Spokley.
Yes. All right, we are moving right along, folks. Next, we have our public comment section on our agenda. This is a time provided so that the public may speak to the council on any items not on the agenda. Please make your comments as brief as possible. This council cannot act on items not included on this agenda. However, the items will be automatically referred to staff. Council members also have the option to speak on any item not on the agenda at this time. I'll start to my right. Anybody? Councilmember Berlant.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to make a note of thanks, and I don't know that I do see our fire chief here tonight, and our police chief, and wanted to thank our firefighters and our police officers who assisted the county with the fire that burned just outside of Colfax. I know other council members had some direct impacts from that fire, but appreciate the mutual aid that our men and women were able to provide to the county, because we know that when the fire occurs here in Auburn, and not if, but when, that the county and CAL FIRE will be providing us that same response. And I would note too, the fairgrounds is still packed with firefighters from all across the state. In fact, I was there today, and the strike team that was there was out of Riverside. And so all corners of the state are here protecting us in Auburn, but more importantly, the greater Placer County area. So again, thank you, Chief, both chiefs for your lending of support from our firefighters. And I'll just make one quick plug to make sure everyone has signed up for placeralert.org. That's where you can sign up for text message, phone call, and email notifications when there's a fire. And I know many people who live around the area use that and stayed up all night waiting patiently to ensure that they didn't get a call that the fire had grown and they were going to need to be evacuated. So fire season is here, placeralert.org. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Any other?
I just wanted to echo Councilman Berlant's comments and thank our men and women who stepped up to the plate to assist our neighbors. It is very important, and we're grateful that the fire wasn't worse than it was. It was already pretty darn bad. And I also wanted to note how proud I am of our community at large, the fact that so many folks stepped up to offer assistance, provide housing for pets, for people, to raise money and funds for those that have suffered. So really do appreciate that overall from the community, all their hard work as well. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm going to also echo what everyone's been saying. I actually am a graduate of Colfax High School, which thank you to our first responders is still standing. As some of the council members know, this was supposed to be my 20th reunion this weekend and it was postponed because of obvious reasons. But everyone that I've talked to couldn't be more grateful to all the first responders, fire. I mean, I saw some ones from Southern California as well, but also police. I saw some of the police came by 3 times by people's houses to make sure they'd evacuated. And it's just so important that all the first responders, those who took care of animals, those who helped out people, it's just so great. There unfortunately was some looting going on. So neighbors were helping neighbors and taking care of each other's homes. And that was so important. I do want to also mention that the Colfax High School Foundation is accepting donations for those students who have lost everything, who are supposed to be starting high school this week. So if anyone is interested in donating, in addition to the many GoFundMe accounts and things that are out there that we're all seeing on Facebook, helping out those students who are starting high school would be a great thing to do as well. So thank you to everyone. We really appreciate it. And we're so grateful that the town of Colfax, even though some people lost their homes, the town of Colfax was able to be saved. And that was a huge win for this fire. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much. And obviously I echo the comments from my fellow council members. With that, we'll go and jump to the public and invite anybody.
Can I
from-
just say one thing? Sorry.
Yes, you may.
I'm in agreement, obviously, I echo the same thing, but I do want to give a shout out. I heard that the high school, Colfax High School kids were at the high school helping and worked very, very hard up there. So I'm proud of our youth of our community. So shout out to them.
Thank you. All right, now we'll jump out to the public and invite any members of the public who would like to come to speak to the council on items not on our agenda. And I see Sally's got her hand up. Coming up, Sally.
Well, I'm still trying to keep Auburn beautiful. No help from the smokers. They don't care. And that's just putting it nicely. But as of today, I am at 2,056,655 cigarette butts that won't be eaten by birds, dogs, fish, other animals. And so many people appreciate what I'm doing. So many people honk and wave as they drive by and yell out the window, "Thank you, butt lady." And I've had people give me money, and I have found some money, and I pick up coins. The pennies add up fast. Anyway, so, okay.
Thank you, Sally. We very much appreciate what you
Yeah.
do out there. Anybody else? Good evening, Mr. Haswell.
Hi, see, I don't need it. I'm Rob Haswell, live at 11075 Oakview Terrace. Also run the Placer County Visitors Bureau and the California Welcome Center Auburn, right across the street, down the street. I know my item, you guys reapproved the lease for us to keep our facility up and running for another 5 years, and just wanted to express our gratitude on behalf of my board, myself, for that, for the great partnership. Really, over the last couple of years, I've been so excited and heartened by all the new leadership, in our community right now. And I'm very bullish on how things are going to go for our community going forward. And all of you have a huge role in it. And I'm super proud just to have a small part of that. And I'm really looking forward, to all of the prosperous success for the next several years. So again, thank you so much for entrusting us in that co-effort with you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you for all you do. Uh-oh.
No.
Good evening, Jackie.
Jackie Westman, Executive Director of the Chamber of Commerce. I'm here to piggyback on what you guys are talking about with the fire. We have teamed up with the Colfax Chamber to do some fundraising. Unfortunately, there isn't, other than the school, a nonprofit up in Colfax that's able to handle donations, and a lot of people want to donate and be able to write it off. So luckily, through the chamber, we have a foundation that is giving back to the community as our mission. So we've teamed up with the Colfax Chamber to allow for people to make donations to us. That's a tax deductible donation through the foundation. We also have now teamed up with the River Fire Relief event that the local salons are putting on. So that will be held at Vision Salon on August 21st from 10 to 3. So all of the donations that are made for that, whether you get your hair cut or you buy a slice of pizza, will go towards the foundation and is tax deductible. And then we have a form that we're sending to all the victims on the Placer County side, because Nevada County has their own foundation that they're distributing to victims. So on the Placer County side, they'll be able to request funds, whether they need a refrigerator full of food, a couple nights stay at a hotel, or help getting along till insurance. So I just want to let everyone know that the Auburn Chamber of Commerce Foundation will be accepting donations on behalf to give to the Colfax area.
Jackie, could you repeat the event and date one more time, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
It is Saturday, August 21st at Vision Salon and Spa from 10 to 3. And they're on Reamer Street, right in town.
Is the foundation information on the Facebook page for the chamber, so I can forward it around to some folks?
Yes, so the flyer is there with the link to, because we set up a page so that you can go online and donate.
Great,
So all that's on the chamber Facebook page.
perfect, thank you.
It's already floating around.
Okay, great.
Thank you. We have any other members of the public? Mr. Murphy?
Michael Murphy, architect, 188 Guard, live across from the high school. Have an office in town. I'm just want some clarification if there's going to be a discussion. I don't see it on the agenda for the American Rescue Plan Act funding.
Yes,
Okay, then will you have public comment at that time?
Absolutely.
it's
Well-
item number 10.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public?
Mayor Spokely, I have a public comment we received via email about a week and a half ago. I'm going to show that public comment for the
Great.
public.
Thank you very much.
This public comment was received, like I said, about a week and a half ago. It was sent to the city council and city staff. And that completes public comment for comments received prior to the meeting.
Thank you very much, Amy. I'll jump back out. Any other comments from the public that are here in attendance tonight? Okay, that Harris Street closure has been a topic. We're all getting asked quite a bit about it. There is some progress, and I would like to ask our city manager, Mr. John Dunleavy, to give us a quick, brief update, if you would, please, on the status of that project.
Yeah, so Mr. Layton's comment has to do with the failure of the slope. They are on the corner of Harrison and I guess it's El Dorado. And I can tell you that we've been working with the property owner. They have until this Thursday to start work on that. They have submitted a grading plan for that. There's a little give and take between our city attorney and the attorney for the property owner. We require them to not only have the slope repaired, well, at least addressed. But the second thing that they're also going to have to do before we will open up the street, they will have to put in an erosion control plan for that. The city put the K-rail in there because the slope is failing. There's no doubt about that. So we've done that just for a precautionary measure, but they are going to need to start working on it this week. As soon as we've gotten both the slope addressed and the erosion controls in, we will pull all the K-rail out, reopen the street.
Great. Thank you very much for that. All right, we'll go ahead and close public comment at this time and move right into council business. First item up is on-call engineering services with Coastland for pavement management plan. John?
Mayor and council, tonight staff's asking the council adopt a resolution authorizing the execution of amendment with our on-call agreement with Coastland Engineering from Auburn regarding the preparation of a pavement management plan. Just real briefly, obviously streets and roads are a major priority of the city council. They are a very important element of our capital improvement program, and it's of huge interest within the community. Tonight's item is authorizing an update of the city's pavement condition index. Lots of acronyms. You'll often hear the term our PCI index, pavement condition index, for this. That will then move into an updated pavement management program for the city. The overall program will integrate with our city's new GIS program. What that does is allows us to begin actually mapping actual data regarding all of our roads, records the conditions, it records the overall rating for the city per se. But more importantly, it represents a really important record-keeping step for the city. This will all go into our capital improvement program. This year, we really only have one pavement project, and that will be the repairs that we do on Auburn Folsom Road. The update of the PCI index in the pavement management system, it's going to come back to the council in two forms. First, it's going to come back in the form of just a pure information item. Second, it'll come back in the form of an updated pavement management program for the city. One of the things that's really nice, we are starting on the update of our internal systems for the city, financial management, our building permits, all of our licensing, but very important is our tracking of projects and our project management system that we have. Once the council has adopted a pavement management program, that all integrates into our project management program. So each year becomes a project. From that, what will happen is all of that information will be very visible to the community. It will go on to our city's website. People will be able to look at the capital improvement program. They can click on a year, they can click on a street, and they will be able to tell those types of things. So with that, I'd like to introduce Dana Schilling. Dana is from Coastland Engineering, and he can just, I told him not to get too far into the weeds, but he'll give you a very brief update on the work that they're going to do. So why don't I turn it to Dana?
Thanks. Good evening, Mayor and Council. As the city manager mentioned, the cities across the nation, one of their biggest assets is their streets, and it's one of the first things that citizens relate to when they relate to a city, the condition of their streets, how they're feeling on the road, if they're feeling safe, if it's smooth, if it's well maintained, and it's a representation of that agency's management of their city. And road pavement is very expensive to maintain. And as you see in the staff report, the city is responsible for the maintenance of 67 centerline miles of streets, and that's a lot. It's 387 streets at the last count. We're going to be verifying that. But just to give you a little history, in August of 2013, the city council received a report on the status of your pavements, and that was a staff level effort that logged streets, did an inventory, and then gave the streets at that time a condition assessment. So one of the recommendations of that report was to take the step that is before you tonight, which is to forward that information into an automated system that will do some predictive modeling for you to help you plan projects appropriately. So many cities, as the city manager mentioned, many cities use a pavement condition index, a PCI rating, and it's universally accepted. And there's many agencies that use that, and some regions, including the Bay Area region, where they actually advertise those PCI ratings in the paper and have little competitions about who's making the best progress. And for some metropolitan areas, that's actually a measure of your availability to receive funding for some programs. So it can get quite competitive. We're not in that situation in this region, but it just kind of tells you that there's a lot of focus on pavement condition. So this our proposed course of action is a pretty standard one, and it's been done in a lot of agencies. But first thing we would do in this course of work is to update your city's inventory. We go through and make sure we have every street accounted for, whether it's public or private, so that we understand what we're working with. Don't want to miss anybody's street, right? You don't want to get a call from somebody and say, you missed my street. So we're gonna do our best to log all those streets. The next, we're gonna divide them into segments. We need to divide these streets into segments that are manageable and measurable, and that represent its age, its configuration, intersections, and the like. Then we'll perform field inspections. So we expect there's going to be about 720 individual inspection segments or units that will be inspected in person and rated individually, and then put into a database. And when that inspector performs that inspection, they'll be putting something into a handheld collector that goes to a cloud-based system, and the PCI for that individual segment will be recorded automatically at that time before he moves on to the next segment. So it's pretty quick, pretty sudden there. So, and then we will meet with city staff and go through treatment strategies. So there's more than one way to fix a street. And so we want to go through and see what's important to the city, what's worked, what staff thinks about the various treatments and the costs associated with that. And then with all that information, we'll turn the handle, so to speak, and let the predictive modeling program do its work and spit out a list of all the streets and how they rate, both from a PCI standpoint and from a cost effectiveness standpoint. Because one of the things that's difficult to know is, with the degradation of a street, when is the best time to spend some money on that street? So that's really the power of the program that's going to help us do that. And then we'll use that analysis to come up with 4 funding scenarios that are pretty typical. And one is a baseline scenario that tells you, if you had all kinds of money to spend, what that would look like. And then others are based on the current funding scenarios that you have. And then we prepare a report for the council's review and input, and then eventually finalize that, as the city manager mentioned. And that report, we hope, would become a valuable tool to staff and council to plan future projects. That's really the benefit of this, is it provides a very objective view of what you've got and the best way to address the maintenance of one of your biggest assets. So that concludes my presentation to you tonight. Be glad to answer any questions you might have.
And thank you very much. Any questions, Vice Mayor Amara?
Thank you. Thank you for your report. I have a couple questions. You said, I think you said it takes about 10 weeks for you to generate your work. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. And then the other question I had was, you said part of the scope of your work is configuration. And we have three schools that are within our city limits.
Mm.
And it would be very beneficial if it was possible to identify what streets would be good for bikes, bicycles, and the safety of that. Is that something that comes in the scope of your work, or is that something that you could do?
That's something that would normally come later with the development of capital improvement projects. But we can certainly, discuss that with staff and keep that in mind. And then when we do the segmentation, it might be beneficial to look at areas that are fronting schools and handle those separately.
Okay, because bike lanes, it would be nice to know, some streets are really very wide and more conducive to it. And so that's something you said that maybe you can keep in mind, or
Mhm.
we could talk about it later then.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah.
And this plan that you'll be doing is for 5 years. Is that what you said? I think it said 5 years in here.
Correct. Yeah. The recommended course of keeping these up to date is to do your major streets, your arterial streets, and reevaluate those every 2 years, or reinspect those every 2 years, and then put that data in. And then for all other streets, to do those every 5 years. And then that just keeps your information rolling, so that you're always up to date.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome.
Thank you, Councilmember Berlin. I'll be with you next. I'm going to jump over here to Councilwoman Don Cavio.
Yes, thank you very much. I actually had the same question with regards to how long the survey would be valid. And you just said that you would recommend that we update it every 2 years for the major streets and then 5 years for our others. So thank you for that. You had mentioned that you're going to be looking at both public and private streets. Is it your vision to include private streets in the PCI survey, even though that's not our responsibility?
No, ma'am. And sorry for that confusion there. No, just to make sure that we have a complete list.
Okay.
A lot of times, and in fact, in your current inventory, there are some private streets listed.
Mhm.
We will verify that they're private or public,
Okay.
just to make sure they're accounted for. With the thought in mind that if the city receives a call on a street, somebody can look at a list or a GIS map and be able to say clearly this is city maintained or privately maintained.
So just for the purposes of the inventory, but not in the PCI survey itself.
Correct.
So, okay, good. I appreciate that clarification. A little concerning. Also, just sort of a general question. I appreciate the timeline. I appreciate that this is something that we should expect within 10 weeks after we formally approve this. So that's a great timeline for us. Now, when this comes to the council, that would be the public's opportunity to provide input or to comment on it. I mean, because I'm sure that people are going to have something to say about what the survey indicates and so forth. But I just want to make sure that they have an opportunity to take a look at the draft and to have that opportunity to comment on as well. So it would be at that meeting when we approve it. Mr. Allen?
This is going to come back in two forms to the council.
Mhm.
The first will be in an information item. It will be presenting all the information, and obviously for people in the community that are interested, that would be really important. Our ability to get this information in, as they do it, it's going to go into a GIS database. Our ability to almost instantaneously have that available for people to look at will be there. But first it comes to the council as an information item, and then it comes back in the form of a program, but we'll get the input. So for the most part, there are 2 bites at the apple on this thing.
Perfect. I appreciate that. And I think it's just important that the public understand there is that process for them to comment and take a look at it. And I'm very appreciative of the ability to put this online ASAP. I mean, I love that we can integrate it into our GIS system and so forth, because technology is the future, and we've been driving for this. I have for the past 20 plus years. So very happy to hear that. And once once we actually have the plan, it'd be great to have that online as well, which that is our plan, so that folks can take a look at it and see what our progress is. Just as transparent as possible is what I say. So thank you. That concludes my questions. I have a couple comments, but I'll reserve that.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Knight.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I didn't see it in the proposal, but if I'm not mistaken, which I could be, our current plan includes some of the city-owned parking lots. Will your study and review look at the parking lots as well, or is your scope specifically to the roadways?
Yeah, our scope is specifically to the roadways at this point.
And then my last question, this may really be for our city manager, but the current plan is a 10-year plan, which we've really struggled to do, mostly financial. We're now making it a 5-year plan. What brings us from 10 to 5? And is that really reasonable? Or are we really going to try to fund it every 5 years? Which I'm not against, and that's why I'm not making comments that that's negative. But I just want to be clear that we're not setting ourselves up for failure with people thinking that in 5 years, every street's going to be repaved if it's not.
Okay, so the direct answer, no, we're not going to do it all in 5 years. But what it does is it gives you a balanced 5-year prioritization of projects, because as Dana points out, you're going to, they will go through and they'll do an overall analysis on how to maximize the life and maintenance of the streets. So frankly, there will be some streets that don't make it into the 5-year plan. But as he points out, for our arterial streets, we'll be looking at those every 2 years. And then the balance at least every 5 years. And if you look at this, the cost of this analysis is a little over $50,000. The reality is spending $10,000 a year on engineering analysis for your streets is not outrageous given the task at hand. So really what happens is that that 5-year program starts rolling after a while. So no, we aren't going to finish it in 5 years, but yes, they are going to be evaluated and streets will fall in. Our ability to have good information that's accessible to people, because part of the policy decision is streets that fall into this rating are not included in the program. And at least that's a way for people to understand why their street isn't being done. It'll be 5 years, not everything.
Before you go on mute, my first question, back to the parking lots. What will be your management plan for the parking lots? Since they'll be taken out of what's in the current overlay report, getting this is just focused on streets. How do we ensure that we don't lose sight of our city-owned parking lots?
So I wrote that down. And it'll roll into, those types of things will roll into the capital improvement program under facilities. And we would include it then, but so it'll go into a different pot.
That's all the questions I have, Mr. Mayor. I do have some comments.
Thank you very much. Councilwoman Riddell Harris.
Thank you. Just one quick question. When the analysis is being done of the roads, if there's any outstanding contributing factors that are found, are those going to be noted as well? Like if there's drainage issues or there's a sinkhole, whatever it is, just because I've seen situations where they just get paved again and then they just end up creating the same problem shortly after, and making sure we're fixing the root cause is key to making sure that long-term those roads last. So how is that noted as you're going through and looking at these things?
Sure. If there are certain modes of failure, like base failure, where the foundation of the road is not competent, that'll be noted.
Okay.
And then those types of notes, and they're actually rated and noted by failure, pavement failure type. So when a street is brought forth for capital maintenance effort, then that gets relayed into the design. So they'll see those notes. They'll estimate the amount of, let's say in this case, base failure repair that needs to be done. And then the appropriate effort will be put toward that street for that. And then if there are some extenuating circumstances beyond the pavement, we'll encourage our raters to look at that and note that. Can't say that we'll catch everything. They're going to be
No,
focused
but
on
if you see
pavement. but
something, it's
yeah,
just easier to catch it now than to have to go back out and try to figure out what the situation is.
Absolutely.
Great,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you very much. I do have a few questions for you. I guess I want to make sure I understand based on our city manager's comments about which roads would be included in the 5-year. You're looking at all of our public roads and you're going to give us a PCI rating for all of the public roads in the city.
That's correct.
And that's kind of the scope of what your contract here is to do, right?
That's correct.
There was comments about the GIS integration, but
Mhm.
I think I read in your scope that that's specifically excluded from your scope of work.
There's a GIS component in the Street Saver program that is available online. So the software takes care of that element.
So your remote sensing devices that you said you're going to be out there with, those will tie directly into a GIS database of some sort.
Yeah. And there's really two ways to go, whatever the city chooses, but one is to use the software that is brought forth with the program. And there's some benefits to that. I mean, it happens fairly seamlessly. And then that can also be relayed to the city's program as well and transition to the city's GIS.
Yeah, so the deliverable is the Street Saver program. And the Street Saver program is, it's automatically integrated into the GIS system. So that would be our piece that comes into it. So the benefit, they're even using Street Saver, and in the GIS program, you just click it and boom, it's right there. And then we as a city are able to manipulate the information as we deem fit, because we get the street segments, we get the ratings, we get the upload, we get the segmentation that all goes in, and then we can use that in other means.
So I don't need to get too granular here with the questions, but if we're talking about this program, Street Saver, and I noticed in the staff report, there's talk about the decision tree process and whether we're going to chip seal or overlay or whatever it might be. That's what that program does. That program will take the various inputs and treatments, surface treatments that we're talking about, and it'll kind of give us, our staff, a recommendation for these streets of these different types of overlaying processes in year 1, year 2, year 3, and on. Is that
Correct. Yeah.
correct overview of
That is really, that's where the city staff really has the most, input, the input that generates the biggest difference. And that is, what do you want to do in a given situation? So we look at all the scenarios for the different, and it's broken up into the type of street segment it is. If it's an arterial or residential or somewhere in between, and then what the condition is, and that's broken up into the various condition levels, of which there's 5. And we ask staff, if you encounter this situation, how would you like to address it? And then we look at that method and we obtain a cost for it, and then we put that cost in the program. And so it's quite a nice spreadsheet for if you're into that. But again, that's really where the discretion is applied. And that has a great deal of impact on the output of the program.
And I know it was asked earlier, but just for iteration, I guess, if it sounds like you recommend on major streets for the PCI to be checked every 2 years, if I heard you right, and then on all the other streets that are publicly maintained every 5 years.
That's correct. And that's the recommendation. Some agencies choose to do less, and that works too. And I think, my recommendation would be, see how it works for you.
Yeah.
If things are not changing that fast, there's no point in spending the extra money. You can dial it back and then do it as you see fit.
Yeah, one good example that the Street Saver does is that it allows you to do scenario building. So obviously you go through, you analyze, your what ifs. But also one of the things that it analyzes is you can plug in variables, including funding. And as Dana points out, he says, well, you tell us the treatment that you want to do. Well, even more importantly is the funding, and understand that the acceleration of all the increase in our gas prices. I can tell you that next year, as they come out with the new SB1 numbers based on gas tax, those are going to go through the roof as far as the amount of revenue. So whether the gas prices are up or the gas prices are down, you're able to go in and manipulate the dollars and the amount that you have to spend that you actually can do. So what that will allow, based on the overall data analysis, is that it'll allow some streets to move up in priority, or if you have less funding, they move down in priority. So, it's the idea that we're going to be more data-driven and more analytical in how we look at these things. And that's what these programs do. The GIS for us is going to be a key public information item for folks. Our ability to have this stuff so that people can go on and look at where they sit in the pecking order as far as their street goes will be very important. So it's just kind of the evolution where we're going with this stuff.
Great, thank you very much. Any other questions? I'll go ahead and open it up to the public. Do we have any public that would like to speak on this item? All right, seeing none, I'll check with Amy. Do we have any online comments? Okay, thank you. I'll go ahead and close the public comment and bring it back to council for questions. We'll start down here with Councilmember Berlant.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to quickly say that I'm really appreciative that we're going through this process and going through really a methodology to be transparent with our residents on the conditions of the streets, because narratively, anybody you ask, the streets are horrible. And that is really no fault to our city staff, who work really hard and are very receptive to fixing potholes and using duct tape and baling wire to keep our infrastructure together. But we really have a lot of funding that we've really put towards roads. And so we need to be strategic in what we're doing. Our current road plan, which may have been really good in 2013, the councils before us struggled in following it based on money and a number of other resources. And there's a lot of streets that are in the plan that never actually made its way out to being done. There are many streets that are city-owned that weren't actually ever in the plan in those 10 years to be paved. And so, there's a lot of work that we have to coming up with a better system. And so I'm excited for one. I think, as our city manager may tell you, the thing that I ask him constantly about is the money that we allotted for 3 years ago that just keeps rolling over. When are we going to see it in actual streets being done? Auburn Folsom obviously going to take that big chunk of that money and do a long-term project, but there are a lot of city streets that still have potholes that were not in the 10-year plan previously. And so looking forward to a new plan that we can follow through. I love the ideas that Councilwoman Amara threw out there about, as we're looking at these streets, identifying which of them can we actually expand to have safe bike lanes, which of them have other infrastructure problems to it that we can't just do an overlay with. And so I think the comments that Councilwoman Riddell Harris also made were very valid. We really need to be more strategic in it. And again, kudos to Menjel and the Public Works team, because they do a great job with what they've been tasked with doing over the last several years. Now it's time to take a step back, though, and be strategic. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Vice Mayor Amara.
Thank you. I'll be very brief. I also appreciate that we're doing this. I appreciate the fact that it's data driven and we're going to take the guesswork out of spending this amount of money. We're spending a large amount of money, and I know there's some streets that we can maybe input that don't have as many vehicles that go through. So I really appreciate this. And I also look forward to in the future focusing on how we can have safe bike lanes and keep that in mind as we move forward. But thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Councilwoman Dowden Cabillo.
Thank you very much. I echo the comments of my colleagues. Very excited about this project, looking forward to the results and appreciate the transparency that we'll have with the public. I think that's incredibly important. And again, thank you very much. So I won't belabor that point, but very appreciative.
Thank you, Councilwoman Riddell Harris.
Thank you. I think this is a great project. I'm a nerdy science person, so I love data. So I love data-driven decisions. And then it's not a matter of opinion of who gets their road done first, which is great because then it's not on us. And it is a lot of money. So I'm really excited about moving forward with getting these roads done. And I agree with Councilwoman Amara about a bike plan, but I think that maybe is a separate item. And I think we should proceed forward with a bike plan of how people can get around town on their bikes, because I think that's important. But if it's not in here, then we should definitely talk to city manager about figuring out how to look at a bike plan and what we want to do with that moving forward.
And pedestrians too, if you're going to incorporate.
Yeah, let's do it all. I mean, there's a lot of people who are interested in modes other than cars, and roads are great, but if we can make sure that we can have access for everybody, that would be great too. Thanks.
Great. Thank you very much. And I'll be brief as well. Yes, I agree with all my colleagues up here this evening. We need data to make adequate decisions on how we spend large amounts of money here in the city on our aging infrastructure. So I'm excited about the project. I look forward to being a part of it and getting your first draft to dig in. And I love spreadsheets, so I'm looking forward to those. One other quick comment, the Street Saver program, I've read a little bit about it. We've talked a little bit about it on SACOG. It is a fairly common tool that municipalities are using to manage their roadway systems and the roadway maintenance programs. So it's a pretty powerful tool from what I understand and what I've read about it. I'm excited that we're going to have it here in the city. And Minjal, I look forward to working with you on that side of the equation here tonight. So thank you, everybody. Looking forward to it. Any other comments from council? All right. With that, I'll go ahead and entertain a motion.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I will move that we authorize the city manager to execute amendment number 1 with Coastland Engineering for the preparation of a pavement management plan for an amount not to exceed $53,775.
I'll second that. I'll second that.
Oh,
We got 2 seconds twice.
Rock, paper, scissors.
Councilmember Brilliant.
Aye.
Amara.
Yes.
Dowden Calvia.
aye.
Riddell Harris.
Aye.
And Mayor Spokley.
Yes. Thank you very much. All right, next item up is item 10, American Rescue Plan Act funding potential projects. John, I'll turn this over to you.
Mayor and council, staff's coming to the council tonight to really start the beginning of a discussion regarding the allocation of the American Rescue Plan Act, better known as ARPA funds. In total, we're going to get about 3.45 million. As a matter of fact, we've gotten the first payment already, a little over 1.7 million that was dropped in our savings account from Department of Finance. Tonight, what I'd like to do is maybe go through with the council some of the ideas and some information regarding ARPA and get some direction from the council. So the American Rescue Plan Act has really 4 main areas of analysis, which are included in the staff report. The idea of economic assistance to businesses impacted by COVID, the impact of COVID on workers, reductions in revenue that localities may have received, and it calls out for the investment in various types of infrastructure, specifically water, sewer, broadband. So the focus of the staff today has been looking at the overall revenue analysis for the city. I can't tell you that the city was absolutely impacted. The reduction in fuel and gas prices during 2020 had a big hit on us. Additionally, the impacts on our transient occupancy tax and the shutdown of the hotels. The difference is that we did a lot of things to balance that, to work with our businesses. And at the last meeting, we talked a little bit about the difference between Auburn and the other communities. We were in the positive while everybody else lost money. We've looked at the impacts on our businesses and what really are the logical next steps. The idea of infrastructure to support our businesses and specifically our business districts. What we can and probably should do to look at this. We've looked at broadband, and we've also looked at being in conformance with the regulations of ARPA. I will tell you, it's really vague. I've actually watched my second webinar over the weekend, and it's about 90 minutes of my life that I won't get back. And there's some regret, but I will tell you that it's still very vague. Everything is a reference to federal guidance documents, federal register information regarding ARPA. But for the most part, what we do know is the ability to spend the money in a way which will benefit business, it'll benefit our economy, it'll benefit businesses that were impacted. And part of our recommendation is to look at this on a longer term investment means. So the first part of ARPA in the memo talks about aid to businesses. And Placer County, and particularly our Auburn, absolutely excelled. If you look at literally the millions of dollars that flowed into the support of businesses, it's really the difference between communities that lost a lot of businesses and those that didn't. The Placer shares 1, 2, and 3 had huge impacts to the benefit. Placer shares 1 were direct stabilization grants that went out up to $10,000, and also the Eats and Drinks program, $1,000. What do we know about Placer Shares? 1, it kept the lights on, and it kept some people from having to walk away. Placer Shares 2 was the direct assistance to medium and larger employers. And that was a program that we'll wait to see where the data came out on that, but we know that that kept people employed. It was less retail and hospitality. It was keeping people from just getting put out the door from our medium and larger employers. And then Placer Shares 3. That was something that absolutely this council had so much to do with, going to Placer County and saying, hey, we need to do some other things. In the city here, it came in on really 5 main areas that we help support. We help support infrastructure with buying a lot of the shade structures that went out there, direct assistance to businesses where we actually gave them money, the idea of the food jets and all those, we actually provided money to numerous businesses. The technical assistance program was strategic because it moved the business community into the idea that they needed to add that additional leg into what they do. They needed to get online. And then finally, lease assistance. And I know that we supported 72 businesses all received some form of lease assistance. And so the aid to our businesses was really important. So the recommendation coming down from staff is the idea of looking at our infrastructure in support of future for the city. Specifically, the idea that we would look to maybe take some plans that the city had in mind through redevelopment, but also some areas that they've worked on in the past that is the idea of adding vitality by doing some strategic items which benefit those business districts. In ARPA, it talks about the impacts to the greatest impacted businesses. So a lot of the streetscape gets into that. We heard the term pedestrian oriented as far as things. One of the things that we know is that if we can actually get people out of their cars and walking, they may be going to my pots and pans store, but they're going to walk by Jackie's Western apparel shop. And eventually they're going to
Congratulations, Jackie.
find that. And then finally, the infrastructure, we go into a new business, into what is the new business paradigm. What did everybody discover with COVID? Their internet is not great. That's what they discovered. And our ability to increase the pipe for better broadband within the community is there. Really quickly, talking about some of the streetscape infrastructure, the city has a plan that was adopted in 2008. It actually has a wide variety, and this goes from Elm down High Street, down Lincoln Way. It ends up literally at the base of Old Town. Amy and I didn't rehearse this. It has a very progressive streetscape plan. This is what the plan for High Street is. It's the idea of giving the street what they call a road diet, adding some parallel parking on one side of the street, which benefits the street because it adds parking. It also adds some amenities, tree wells, and it really is a model of what they call low impact design, because whether people realize it or not, the water running through the gutter that runs through the tree well areas, it cleans the water, and it's one of the items that helps those types of things qualify. But this is what they have for High Street, which is really the extension of additional diagonal parking going up one side, keeps parallel on the other. It shrinks the street down, and it'll aid in the future. Next. This is just a portion. This right here, this is actually the portion, phase one, that was completed, and it goes essentially a portion of High Street. It goes down Lincoln Way. Central Square was created, and it goes to about Pine Street where it stops. And one of I've walked out there with some of the council members. The best part is that you actually see it working. If you walk up the street here on Lincoln Way, and we talked about the safety and the pedestrian orientation, what's the first thing you see if you stand in front of the bulb out in front of the baker and cake maker? The first thing you see is everybody hitting their brake lights as they walk in or as they drive in. People are slowing down. That's what it does to traffic. Makes it safer for pedestrians, bicyclists, everybody coming in to downtown. One of the things that we do have for the area is really two things. One of them is the city's already been analyzed for undergrounding of utilities. Central Square project, the first phase, the vast majority of the cost was for undergrounding. And I can tell you that staff is not going to necessarily propose that we spend this money on undergrounding. This will probably do about a block. So the idea is that we probably wouldn't do that, but we can certainly look at the streetscape design segments. Some of the areas that aren't necessarily included in the plan, but actually, this is a horrible photo. I met with Michael Murphy yesterday afternoon, and he quite generously gave up a part of his Sunday to sit down with me. And there's some really good work that's been done here in town, like really good. And as we look at some of the solutions for both Old Town and the upper downtown area of Lincoln Way, there's a lot of possibilities. In the very the bottom, that is where the Auburn Ale House is located. One of the things that we received at the traffic committee were some of the tentative plans that they have with the Old Town Business Association, and they call for a better use of the triangle. This plan right here And I think Michael actually had some copies made of the plan. I think they're sitting on the table right there that I'll get to everybody. It's the idea is that we would create 2 pedestrian areas while still allowing traffic to flow. There's a very large bulb out in front of the Auburn Ale House building, but also a very significant bulb out in front of the old post office. The idea is creating 2 really great spaces within a triangle area that's kind of in no man's land right now. But you see these types of ideas. If we were to take the money from ARPA and put it into a project here in Old Town, a project in upper downtown, there's a possibility that we could really do some amazing work in both of these areas, enhance the overall orientation, and really create amenities that dramatically benefit those areas. So the recommendation from staff is that we continue a discussion looking at infrastructure. The 3 areas that I indicated in the staff report, downtown, the upper part of downtown, and including High Street, Old Town, and broadband. And my suggestion is that we, the council, consider doing some subcommittees. There's going to be a lot of people that want to have an input on both sides. The idea is that we put together some subcommittees that would include some council members, some planning commission members, members of the business associations. When it comes to the broadband, the Chamber of Commerce has some very good people that are really on top of all of these issues as far as the broadband. So my suggestion is maybe a council member, a planning commissioner, and some folks from the chamber to talk about it. So with that, staff's recommendation is that you give me some direction on where you'd like to go on this, and again, advancing further discussion on all these things. $3.5 million sounds like a lot. It's not as much as you think, but there is an opportunity for us to take some plans. Today, I was on a Zoom with a lady named Meredith. She was the project manager. She did all the construction docs. They have, when you talk about projects, especially with federal money, the phrase shovel ready is like really important. And that involves making sure that your environmental documents are in order. The good news is that it was during this streetscape process that the state abandoned the Lincoln Way High Street segment of Highway 49, and they moved it around. The best part, they did an environmental document on that. So I was celebrating because nothing against consultants, Dana, but they eat a lot of a lot of budgets. So our ability to scrape and skimp and put money into the actual infrastructure is there. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions from the council.
Thank you very much, John. We'll start from my left here over with you, Councilwoman Riddell Harris.
Do you know? Thank you, John. That was a great presentation. Sorry, thinking about lots of fun things. I wasn't involved in the original Auburn Streetscape plan, but it seems like a really interesting, great plan that could really benefit our city. The 3 recommendations that you had, how much will it cost to do each one of those things? You recommended breaking it up, but what's the total cost of each one? Are we just putting in 20% of each project and we have to find the rest, or is this going to fully fund all the broadband, all of the downtown, and all of the Old Town project?
No, it absolutely will not fund the entire project. The idea is, and the reason why I'm kind of suggesting a subcommittee is that we put the engineering folks, we talk about the prioritization, we look at some of the costs, because construction costs today are just, they're different than last month. So we're going to have to do our best to figure out what we're going to do. But the idea is prioritize on where we want to look at these things and then start doing the math.
Look, I guess this is like partly legal, partly legal. I know that things aren't defined very well, but I didn't see a lot of stuff about economic development, redevelopment in the 4 categories. I saw stuff about direct to business. Sorry. I'll start over. In those 4 categories that you gave us, I didn't see a lot around economic development or redevelopment of areas. I saw more around direct to business, direct to residents, sewer, water. There's another one in that's infrastructure that's allowed. Broadband. So how does the redevelopment of those 2 areas fit into those categories? It kind of seems like we're trying to make them fit. I don't know. Thoughts?
So one of the benefits of the design that we have is that it's all low impact design. It's the idea that literally we're putting bioswales in, and clean water is one of the allowable uses. And it's absolutely justified. We are putting bioswales in as part of the infrastructure. But also, if you look at the first element of ARPA, it says where you can find a nexus to direct benefit to the businesses, especially hospitality and tourism that were impacted. So there's a lot of justification. Our downtown and Old Town are very much visitor serving. It's not like this, there's no Target there. So our justification to say that we are very much visitor serving and that we have an environmental component to it. That's what made this kind of low hanging fruit, quite frankly.
Okay. And then, like you pointed out, we have done a really good job with business, with helping them to get through this. We haven't done a lot to help individual residents. Did we look at any way of helping individual residents? I know that affordable housing is one of the things that's allowed through this. I saw when I was reading through. Did we look at opportunities to help with affordable housing? And then also I know that we've had some sewer issues that have been a problem in the city before, and that we've got some considerable costs that are coming up around that. Did we look into sewer as another opportunity to help residents with the costs that they're having? Just asking that question.
So part of that includes looking at storm drains. I can tell you that our public works group brought that up, and we talked a little bit about it last week. But in relation to this, I'll be really straight with you. We went to what we thought would be the balance between some infrastructure and some economic revitalization benefit. But as far as outreaching into specific sewer projects, no. And as far as affordable housing goes, no.
Okay. I think that's all I have for now.
Thank you, Councilwoman Dowden-Cavil.
Yes, thank you very much. I actually had a similar question to Councilwoman Riddell Harris with regards to the nexus. When I was looking at the infrastructure investment section, it basically indicates that eligible water and sewer infrastructure investments are determined based on projects that would be eligible to receive financial assistance through the Clean Water State Revolving Fund and the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund. So I just want to make sure that the projects, I know you were talking about the bioswales and so forth, but that those are actually projects that would qualify for funding under those funding sources. So we've looked at that and we've confirmed that they would.
The one thing that I can tell you is that when it comes to the interpretations of ARPA by the Department of Finance, there's a wide latitude that you can use. So right now, we're basically using the latitude that projects which benefit clean water would fall into that. There's, I can say that we will take a number of diverging nexuses, whatever the next I is. So the idea of being able to point at multiple benefits impacted by COVID within the context of the environmental benefit would fall under there. And one of the things that we do know is the clean water projects do qualify.
I appreciate that. And I think that, when I look at our streetscape plan, I could make the argument pretty clearly that we are addressing some potential water pollution, at least preventing water pollution and so forth with, perhaps less cars because you're making it more pedestrian friendly and so forth. So I think you could tie a nexus. I just want to make sure that we don't get questioned or accused of doing something inappropriate. 3.4 million seems like a lot of money, but it really is just a drop in the bucket, as you mentioned, with regards to these kinds of projects here. I do know with regard to broadband, which I'm a big supporter. I think that broadband, not just for residents, but maybe even more importantly for our businesses and trying to utilize, having fiber available to attract businesses is incredibly key, especially out at the airport. So I'm all for that. And I do recognize that there's actual additional dollars targeted for broadband as well. So, I would see maybe a smaller amount from ARPA for broadband because we do have that. We have, I think, two different sources. Is there state and federal money, John, for broadband?
Yeah,
Right?
the state just put $7 billion to go for broadband. And in the multi-trillion-dollar package that's flowing out of the federal government now on infrastructure, that also has a huge broadband component. And, we'll get a depiction of Auburn as a little more rural than I think we actually are, but I can tell you, we will check every box that we can that says that we're a rural community because there's a lot of money going that way.
And I think it's really important because, again, as you mentioned, we really felt that shortage that we had with regards to broadband and internet capabilities. I'm fortunate. I live in a neighborhood that actually has fiber because I live within there's a mile from I think AT&T or what have you. So we've enjoyed the quick speeds, but everybody should be able to have that and connectivity, security, and so forth. Some folks don't even have access to internet very easily. So appreciate that as well. When you talked about the committee makeup with the council members and planning commissioners and then a DBA and OTBA representative, I think it would be, beneficial to perhaps broaden those a little bit more, just to bring in some other folks that have had a lot of work in this particular arena in the past that could provide very valuable services that we might otherwise have to pay for. So I think I'd like to maybe broaden those a little bit. I know that we've had Michael Murphy's expressed interest to me personally in serving, and I know that he's done a lot of work on in this particular arena. In fact, he's got the plans over there, and I think that he would be a very valuable member to have serve in the capacity of one of our committees as well. So I'd like to maybe broaden that a little bit. So that's it.
Thank you very much. Vice Mayor Mara.
Yes, most of my questions have been answered. I just have one quick one here with regard to the committees. Will it be part of the committee's call to determine approximate use of them? I mean, in other words, maybe like I think Councilwoman Calvillo said that broadband will be getting other monies, so maybe we won't have to spend as much. Maybe Old Town won't need as much. So will the committees kind of be a part of the decision making in terms of allocation of the 3 million?
Certainly, the role of the committees is I want to see our staff do a great job of working with those committees and outreaching into the public so that when it comes to what we want to do in downtown, what we want to do in Old Town, what we want to do with broadband, there's still a ton more information that needs to come in. And our ability, the committees are meant to be a vehicle for transparency and input and buy-in. Whatever comes for downtown absolutely needs to have everybody in downtown going, well, at least most of the people going, thumbs up, let's do this thing. So there's a lot more information, and yeah, the subcommittee would be bringing a recommendation to the entire council. The one thing about subcommittees is there's going to be a lot of questions and answering that goes on, and the ability to have members of this council say, you know, we did talk about that.
Good.
And this is why we went in this direction on various things. It just aids in the process on it.
Thank you. I was just trying to get the scope. And I do also agree that expanding the committees is a really good idea. I think I will concur. We have a lot of good architects, and I know Michael Murphy does have a very good eye. I would appreciate having a little bit of an expansion because he and many others who might be interested see things that I probably wouldn't see. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Lang.
No questions.
Great, thank you. I do have a couple of follow-up questions. So, John, you've kind of narrowed it down to those three categories: a project in Old Town, a project in downtown, and the broadband efforts. What were there other considerations, other areas that we thought we might be able to use the 3.45 million, or how did you come to those three projects?
So the four main areas that ARPA looks at, the idea of business assistance, employees, the infrastructure, and the impacts that the city had. I tried to draw a nexus between the two key things that I think really were the reality of COVID in Auburn. One was the impacts on businesses. And the second is the ability the infrastructure becomes a longer term investment than just, conceivably under the first part for ARPA, if we wanted to give every pizza place in town money, we could. That's what it says it can. But so, I always look at infrastructure as a benefit. There are some grander projects that all of this money could be eaten up in. Specifically, if we wanted to do a major storm drain project. But I don't see that as having as direct a nexus. Is it a big issue for the city? Absolutely. Does it have a direct nexus to COVID and the goals of the program? I don't think it does, at least not on first phase. So in so many ways, we're going to have to draw a nexus to multiple things. Our ability to have our funding decisions kind of pass the audit test is going to have a number of things that we hang our shingle on. So that's primarily the thinking about all of this.
So that question was further down on my list, but you just mentioned the audit process. And I know through the PPP program, there was significant angst from any business who received those PPP funds based on the uncertainty, the unknowing, what are the reporting requirements? Will the money be clawed back? All of those sorts of things. I noticed in the staff report and in the report we got from Gary's office that it seems like those details are still very vague, like typically from the federal government. So do you have any concerns, or Gary, do you have any concerns with the uses that we decide in these groups to expend this money, because we do have a window that we have to spend it, that somebody somewhere along the way says, no, I disagree. I don't think that was the appropriate use or appropriate way to spend that money. What kind of risks are we talking about with these decisions that it sounds like we're making on the uses for this money and having it potentially clawed back in some other payback program that we would have to entertain, whatever that might be with the federal government?
So there is the October submittal every year as part of that in the audit process. I do think that there will be multiple things to hang a shingle on, as the city manager mentioned, not just the infrastructure, but aid to businesses and the other impacts from COVID. So I think part of that is being proactive with the narrative and then working with that audit process in your submittal. They're going to catch it. If they disagree with that, they're going to let the city know. So there's going to be an opportunity there. Not all the funds will be spent. There's several years to commit it and spend it through the end of 2024. So should there be some issue or back and forth that isn't corrected or dealt with, there'll be an opportunity before the city commits too much, where I think it would be an issue that you're worried about.
I can tell you that from trying to get the details or everything, the webinars I've watched with the folks from State Department of Finance, these ladies are the most articulate and confident, but lacking in substance and anything definitive that you've ever seen. You just sit there and every time there's a question that comes up, they just refer you back to the guidance, and the guidance doesn't say a whole lot. So there are some things that are very fluid, but I know that if you can show faith that you are following the intent of these things, that gets you at least halfway there. So the ability, like I said, that we're going to be aiding businesses, we're going to do things that really do pass the smell tests as far as infrastructure and clean water and those types of things. Our ability to check all those boxes for whatever audit they come out with. But I also know that total funding from the federal government is now exceeding $13 trillion. That may be one heck of an audit, and I think anybody who gets that contract is going to do well. But I think our ability to check a lot of boxes and show that we did things within good faith is what we absolutely have to do.
Okay, thank you. The other comment you made early on in your presentation is that the first round of ARPA funding has already been deposited in our savings account. So do we have minimum expenditures that we have to hit in the next 5 years between now and 2026?
I think Nathan told me that we have to have all the money out the door by 2024. So that's the goal.
Hi, Nathan. Good to see you.
Members of the council, John, that's really close. We have to have it committed by 2024, and then we can't change our mind after that. So we have to have it spent by 2026. And I probably did tell John that, and I was wrong. So let's just go with that.
But I will tell you from the staff perspective, based on my first interpretation of what Nathan told me, we will have this money out the door by 2024. That will be that's what we're going to do.
Great. Thank you very much, Nathan. I do have one other quick question, and it was mentioned, I think, by most of my colleagues, but the structure of setting up these committees, I would imagine that just about everybody on this council will have an interest in being on the committee. Is individual committees the best approach when I know I want to be on one of the committees. I'm sure, again, everybody else wants to be on one of the committees. Is that the best approach, or is a workshop program open?
See, one of the things I see is, the ability of having a non-quorum committee is that it allows for us to do walking tours, to have the council members meet with staff and resources that we have out there. And that's part of the goal. I can absolutely see us standing out in the middle of Old Town talking about some of these ideas. And so ultimately, when this all comes back, it'll be a workshop that we have. But ultimately, the idea is that we have flexibility, that the committees can get briefings. The committee meetings will be a little more informal because we are going to want to invite the property owners and the businesses out to come out and talk about all this stuff. So at the end of it, I see that the committees are going to be, for the most part, a working group. They're going to sit there and they're going to work with staff and give input, and then it'll all come back in. So at the end of the day, the non-quorum committee gives a lot of flexibility.
Okay, thank you very much. Those are all of my questions.
Yeah, just a quick question with piggyback on the committee issue, Mr. Mayor, is that we do have Shack. And so I wonder how you envision rolling them into this, because they really were targeted or tasked with looking at streetscapes and art and so forth in the downtown and really the Old Town corridor. So I'm just wondering if you've given any thought to how we would include them in this process, just.
Quite honestly, nothing against Shaq, but Shaq meets like 2 times a year on a lot of these things. And they have a pretty specific role, but they can absolutely come to the meetings. And if we think we need to roll them in, absolutely we will.
I've got a question. Sorry, just as you guys were talking. Is there going to be, before we make this, I know we're kind of starting to get down the road that these are the 3 things, but before is there an opportunity to back up and ask the public what they see as a priority and what they'd like to do? I think that workshop that we had on the budget was really helpful to find out where the community was and where they see as a top priority for our community. And so is there going to be an opportunity before we make a decision on any of this to get some more? I know we represent the community, but they don't always know what we're talking about and they don't always have the time. It'd be nice to do some outreach to them and see what they're interested in having us spend this money on.
So not that we haven't, I'm trying to think of the vehicle for doing that.
We have 2.5 years, so we have time to think about it. I mean, it's not like it has to be decided tomorrow, but.
I think as some of this stuff starts rolling out a little bit, I think as more detail comes out regarding ARPA, this is a process that's going to take a number of months. Let me come back to our next meeting, just kind of as an update, and let me kind of noodle through that a little bit.
Okay.
Because in essence, the one thing about these monies is that they do have certain uses.
Oh yeah, we could give them like, here are the 8 things that we're allowed to do with these. What are your interests? What do you prioritize?
Yeah.
I'm not saying make it open to anything that they feel like talking about at the time.
Let me kind of noodle through it and bring that back.
Okay.
I don't want to be too premature on.
I know Placer County is doing that. They, of course, are receiving a lot more revenue than we are. We've got 3.4 million, which part of that is being allocated for our staff. We've already identified that as allowed under ARPA as well. So part of the difficulty we have, of course, is that it might seem like a lot of money, but there just isn't a lot of money. And I just want to be careful. Some projects, are you going to take a look at a large project or a whole bunch of little tiny projects or what have you? So it's an important slope to kind of go down and think about. Certainly we want to include the public, as we go through this process, but I'm also just aware of the fact that it's just not a lot of money, of course, so, and another thing too, with regards to funding the projects, whatever they may be, I'm anticipating that staff will provide some additional potential funding sources, because again, we're talking about, the $3 million doesn't go very far for these kinds of things. But, the hope is that we'll have at least identify some additional funding sources that might be available to help, augment the cost. Because unless we get another 3, 4, 5, 10, 15, $20 million, makes it tough to fund as well.
All righty, thank you all. We're going to go ahead and open this up to the members of our public that are here with us tonight. We've got a race for the podium. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. My name is Steve Hallam. I'm a city resident, live at 12715 Shockley Woods Court, very, very north end of the city, but I make the cut. I just wanted to come here tonight to speak in support of Mr. Dunleavy's proposal. 2 weeks ago, well, actually about a month and a half ago, Mike Murphy and I got together and we kind of talked about design ideas and the streetscapes and different projects, and kind of looked at the potential of the ARPA funding as catalyst to make a long-term investment. And I appreciated when Mr. Dunleavy said that tonight, because so many things we do short-term have a very short lifespan. And we were kind of talking about the Central Plaza, the Bell Tower, some of the major catalyst projects that were done largely with redevelopment funding. But those are the projects that are now 20, 25, 30 years old that have lasted, and really what I think as a resident of the city make Auburn someplace special. So we had gotten our heads together and came up with an initiative called the Auburn Legacy Landmark Initiative that we came to promote to Mr. Dunleavy as maybe pulling a portion of the ARPA funds out to fund that. And then he started sharing his ideas, and we kind of realized we're on the same plane here. And there are some really positive things that can happen that maybe won't happen in any other way of funding. And so I wanted to just speak in support of the proposal. I was going to respond to Ms. Riddell Harris. One of the things John kind of focused me on was, what's the nexus? And so this weekend I was doing a bunch of internet research and came across a 42-page Q&A that the U.S. Department of Treasury put out on June 23rd, responding to different questions that they're getting on allowable uses of this money. One of the things that point 218 was the question they answered on June 23rd. Would investments in improving outdoor spaces, e.g. parks, be an eligible use of funds as a response to the public health emergency and or its negative economic impacts? And there's paragraphs you can read, but the salient point that I came down to is recipients may provide assistance to small businesses in all communities. Assistance to small businesses could include support to enhance outdoor spaces for COVID-19 mitigation. In other words, restaurants, patios, outdoor features, or to improve the built environment of the neighborhood, e.g. facade improvements. And I think there's a lot of broad latitude in the ARPA funding. So we're anxious to see the city move forward. Again, I wanted to support the city manager's recommendation, and I think there's many people here to help. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Get control of the emotions. I'm so excited 30 years after we did this with Main Street, with the streetscapes, and we've been through this before. That one was a 7 to 9 committee members with a lot of draw and different things, and we accomplished quite a bit for uptown, downtown, and looking at different items. My whole idea of coming to Auburn is to make it better. And I use my talents as an architect and as an artist and as an organizer to get things going. And I've been at it with Caltrans. I've been at it with service clubs, putting things together, getting people to share that excitement. We've had workshops, we've had charrettes, we've had different ways of communicating things to the public and getting consensus, identifying a broad range of projects, knowing that we aren't going to be able to accomplish them all right away, or if ever. You know, I've seen 20 to 30 projects start on the board, and we still have a lot of them on the board. I think the basic intent that I come is if we can get people off the freeway, get 70,000 people a day going by there, getting them to come into our charming town, not screw up the town too bad and make it use all the historical background. They run into friendly people and they have a tendency to want to stay. You get them out of their car, you get them walking along the road. We've had projects for all those types of things on the Arts Commission, for the different commissions. So the talent's out there. You know, the Steve was the planning director of this town for 5 years. He talks with a lot of insight. He loved the town enough to come back and live here. And he also has an idea of the ins and outs that he can assist us with for getting additional funding. So, you know, maybe this 3 million is, like you say, only 20% of what we actually get. We got a lot of volunteer service and a lot of volunteer organizations involved. We built, you know, the downtown sign. We built the miners mine head on the other side of the railway tracks. These were all done with some city funding, but with volunteers like Virgil Trainer and group building these things. And so it's such excitement that I have to not get caught up in, because I know these things take time and they take organization. But to see that positive energy and to be able to have some funding that you can work with, and then creating a group that is inclusive, not exclusive. I don't know that it has to be made up of different regions. I don't know that it has to be made up of different things. It has to have its job as the main objective is to make our more tourism, more money spent in our town, and any improvements that happen in it, just make it beautiful, keep it beautiful. So that's my input. There's different ways of doing it. I found it easier with one committee versus a bunch of committees, but I've been on different committees. I've been on the planning commission. And the idea is not to have, I know you all want to be participate in it. Well, we do that through workshops and charrette, and you can get a feeling for what the people feel when they come out and do that. And I think that's how you make it more inclusive. And I brought examples of some of the earlier work that we did. A lot of it is put out. I've done work for the city, and a lot of planners and different people can work for the city. And it's just for the benefit of y'all. So I'd like to answer any questions.
Any questions for Michael? Nope. No questions. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate your
other-
willingness to step up and serve.
Any other questions from members of the public? Alrighty, seeing none, I'll go ahead and close the public comment, bring it back to council for further comments. We'll start with you, Councilman Berlant.
I'll be quick because last time I made the bulk of my comments. I want to thank the research Mr. Hallam has done, Mr. Murphy in the Main Street program, bringing it to Auburn. A lot of work has been done to create a plan. We already have a plan. The Streetscape Plan is thorough. The environmental documents by Miracle seem to be in line and ready to go. And so we really do have some shovel-ready work that we can use. I just want to remind us that the work that we did in this last year and a half that John mentioned in getting our businesses outside, not only kept them in business. Again, we were the only city to see an uptick in our restaurant revenue, right? We know that this stuff has a direct impact. And so I'm really supportive of John's plan, specifically related to some of the infrastructure. I think by getting us outdoors in 2020, the thing we really noted was the accessibility challenges that we have in areas that did not see the Streetscape project. The upper portion of Lincoln Way, portions of Old Town are not ADA accessible, they're dangerous. And this is an opportunity for us to not only fix that accessibility for pedestrians, but also really expand the streetscape as it had already been planned out. Probably can't do all of it, but if we can at least extend it a little bit and do a little bit of work by pushing out with more trees, which has been a discussion item of this council, pushing out more areas for outdoor dining, which has been a discussion of this council. I think we'll have some direct impact and meet very clearly the guidelines, even though they're not very clear guidelines. I also think that we're going to have to do our best to come up with those nexuses, because if we're going to wait here for federal specifics, we'll be here in 2024 without John having spent a penny. I'm very supportive of this idea of bringing in broadband. The Chamber Government Affairs Committee has discussed it significantly. And I know that our city manager and even Councilwoman Dowden Calvillo has participated in some of those conversations. That seems to be in the chamber's wheelhouse of something that they've identified as, we really want to bring tech companies in. Not all of us are as lucky as the stretch in Robie Point. Some of us on other parts of town struggle with just normal internet. Well, how about our businesses in the core and even potentially in the airport? We really need to be able to allow them to attract Bay Area tech type of companies who can have reliable infrastructure through broadband. So I think this is a good general three concepts. And I think there's a lot that can still be melded. I look forward to a committee, a workshop, whatever you want to call it, because I do think that, the public's input is important. I mean, we have, again, plans have been taken into account that solicited a significant amount of time and research and input already. Let's just dust off that plan and put it back to work. So very supportive of John's. If you have not had a chance to walk through town with John, when he and I did it, we talked to a lot of business owners. A lot of people wanted to know what the heck we were doing. And so we were able to hear from a lot of people what they thought. Not all of them agreed with John or my ideas, but it really gave us some clear idea that the businesses want to see more, specifically in those areas that did not get the Central Square and the Lincoln Way streetscape. Being the representative of Old Town, I'll wrap it up with this, being their liaison. They still are very upset that they never got to see any of the streetscape project, and they feel a bit left out. And so I really appreciate John's opportunity, as he already has, to solicit feedback from OTBA and DBA, because I think their membership and their role and their input is going to be critical in our overall success. Because let's not forget, we will have some impact in any construction items that we do. And so there will be a little bit of pain when we do any type of improvements, and making sure our businesses are a part of that decision makes it a little bit easier. So John, fully support these three target core areas that you've identified. Look forward to supporting whichever other two council members sit on that committee, but definitely looking forward to us getting that money to some good use. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Vice Mayor Amaro.
Thank you. Yes, and I'm very supportive also of the recommendation to have these three projects be a part of ARPA. Also, I love the idea of the committees. I think that's, although, like I said earlier, I think expanding the committees would be wonderful. But I think the fact that it's informal and it allows people, I know just walking the streets really has people come out and give their input in a manner that's not formal all the time. Eventually, a workshop would be a good thing. And as Councilman Berlant said, I've always been a fan of the outdoors. The expanding our outdoor visibility and opportunities for restaurants and dining and even retail is a wonderful thing. Again, this would give us an opportunity to, I think the plan, which we already have, calls for trees. The Sustainability Committee I'd love to see them a part of it, because that's part of their mission, and they already have plans working on that. Also, Downtown Business Association, they have a lot of ideas that's on the books, and I think it's wonderful that we're including them. But this is a wonderful plan. I'm very supportive, and I'm happy that we're moving quickly, hopefully, on this. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Councilwoman, let's go with Down Covey.
Yes, the two women down here on this side of it. I agree. I'm very supportive of the proposals as well. I think that, we've had the streetscape plan. It's time to dust it off. This is a perfect opportunity, because we really, with the dissolving of the Auburn Urban Development Authority and redevelopment in general, we lost our funding source. And they're really, to have any kind of monies available for this project, there's so many different needs in the city, and there's so many competing priorities, fire prevention, public safety. These are, concrete issues, road improvement, things like that, where our monies go, and projects that can really focus on economic development and bringing folks to downtown, which help us to collect more revenue, which help us to raise more money for more programs, to spend more money on our roads and so forth, is certainly a good thing. And I appreciate that we're taking a look at these old plans. I love the fact that the environmental work has been done. And so we don't have to go through CEQA again, because that can be incredibly expensive, as our city manager indicated. So I do hope that the public will be involved, and it sounds like they will be. The committees allow that transparency and allow the public to kind of come and go and to provide valuable input in this process. But I think that we have a great opportunity here. These are one-time monies, so we can't utilize the funds for the purposes of something that requires sustainable funding. And, it may enable us to leverage for other funding as well, because obviously the 3.4 is not going to cover the total cost. I'm excited about broadband. As I mentioned previously, I think that there are a lot of improvements that we can do to again, attract those businesses that need that high speed internet, that reliable internet. And again, not just our businesses, our residents too. We saw that with our schools and so forth. So I'm supportive of this. I appreciate John's looking around at different things. I know that there are so many different items that we could spend the money on, but I think that overall, these projects would have a great benefit to our community, and looking forward to moving forward.
Great. Thank you very much, Councilwoman Riddell Harris.
Thank you. I think that this streetscape project is a great project. I think that we should work and figure out a way to fund it. I think it's very important for us to get it done. However, I don't think it's as critical to helping us to deal with COVID as getting the broadband done. I'm concerned that we're saying there's lots of forms to fund broadband, but I don't want to half fund 3 projects. I want to make sure one project gets all the way done. And I want to make sure that our kids have internet. Everyone working from home, including myself, has reliable internet, because this is forcing everyone to work at home. You say you want high-tech companies. Well, most of their workers work at home. And if they can't get broadband or high-speed internet at home, we're not going to attract them, even if we have it in the business corridors. So I want to make sure that we're providing something that will help everyone to cope with COVID as COVID is back again. And I just heard from my company that we're going to be staying home for a while longer. We need to have reliable internet. That's, for me, I don't want to fund these other projects until I know that project is fully funded and that it's ready to go. And then I'll think about other options for the money. But if we get half funded broadband and we're working on these construction projects, I know a lot of residents that are going to be disappointed that we weren't able to finish the thing that really helps them through COVID in order to have a more beautiful downtown and Old Town. Thank you.
Thank you. I do agree with the majority of my council members that seems like a pretty fair balance of use of these funds to kind of focus on our downtown, Old Town, and then put a chunk of the money towards broadband. I would agree completely with Councilwoman Riddell Harris that broadband in our community is critically important. And it certainly is something we need to focus on. And I know it was part of our 5-year CIP this year is to kind of get rolling with some other funding sources before the ARPA came about to advance that cause. So I brought up the question about the committees, but I had actually forgotten about the fact that the streetscape projects do have an environmental document. That's a significant hurdle that would not delay the delivery of any of these other projects. So for that, I'm fully in support. I do just want to make the comment about leapfrogging and having gaps in whatever the form of this committee is. We need to make sure that it's cohesive extension of the work that's already been done. There's as a infrastructure engineer, there's nothing that drives me crazier than to see projects that are done in one spot and then big gaps of nothing happening and they start the project again. It's just, it defeats, I think, the purpose of the project, which is connectivity when you have leapfrog development like that. So something to think about, something to talk about as we move these ideas forward. I do have some concerns about the uncertainty of the federal requirements for expenditures of these dollars, but we got to get going. So I appreciate the city manager bringing this forward for us tonight. So those are my comments. I think that's adequate direction for you, John. Do you have any questions for us before we close this item?
Yeah, no, just to wrap it up, what I'll do is I will bring this back to the next council meeting to just either have council members go on to one of the subcommittees. We're still doing some homework on all of this. So let me bring it back to our next meeting in September. And I'll line those things up and to Councilmember Riddell Harris's request on further outreach into the community on the things. So bottom line, I'll bring this back on September 16th.
I want to make sure we're not forming committees and deciding on this before we get the public input. We need to do the public input first and make sure that this is really what people want us to do. And then after that's been decided, then we work.
Yeah, I think John will bring it back like he just mentioned, and we'll talk about the next steps, whether
Okay.
that's public outreach, something or other,
Okay.
or setting up committees. And they're going to be inclusive committees, I think, as Mr. Murphy mentioned. We don't, I mean, I'm sure that I'll be able to go and attend a committee walk or a committee meeting for something that I'm not involved with. At least I certainly hope I'll be able to do that. So.
I was just going to ask also with regards to broadband, and we talked about, we know that there are monies available at the state for broadband, maybe as a separate item, because this is really about ARPA funding, but I would love to really know more about what is available from the state for broadband, what's the process for securing those funds? I don't know even what governmental agency is responsible for allocating the monies, if they're in the form of grants or what, so I would really, as a future item, I'd like to know more about what funding is available for broadband and how we can supplement that, because that will help us just determine how much to spend on broadband with ARPA monies as well. So, because again, I think we all agree that that is incredibly important, and there's a clear nexus with what the federal guidelines say. So I'd just like to know what all of our options are. Of course, they're still working out the other broadband issues on the federal level with infrastructure and so forth. So, but really just knowing what's available at the state and what's the process, and do we even have a chance of securing any of those funds? So.
I have a super good contact, so I will I will get that and bring it back as an information item to the council.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Great. Thank you very much. Let's go ahead and move on to reports. First up is our city manager report.
Two quick items, of course. The endurance capital of the world deserves nothing but to be the main topic of Ultra Running Magazine. When I was up in Olympic Valley the day before the race, I went up and I was giving my business card to everybody, and I gave it to the editor of Ultra Running Magazine. They were up there. Laura Cantor sent me the advance. Nobody else has this copy yet, but what is it all about? It's all about Auburn, California. This magazine goes out to over 1 million people. So let's hear it for Auburn. And the thing that is so cool for me about living in Auburn is I know all the people that are in this magazine. So that was, haven't read it. Maybe I'll share it with everybody once I'm done. Amy, could you put that picture I gave you? So one fun fact that the council knows about me is that I've refereed some of the most competitive soccer in our hemisphere. But one of the areas that I am particularly proud of is that I am a power soccer referee. And this week, the Northern California chapter of the U.S. Power Soccer Association, all these athletes are in wheelchairs. There are folks that are quadriplegics, paraplegics, cerebral palsy. This is power soccer. I try and describe them, but they're electric wheelchairs with basically a big football face mask on the front of them. The two individuals right in the middle, this is from today. So we were down in Folsom at a very nice place. But sitting there in the middle, one is wearing, they're directly in the middle, but one is Tomas Gomez, who is the #1 person on the Sac Republic soccer team. The other is Cameron Awase. He is their #1 scorer and clearly their most valuable player. But what we did was they came out to meet the players, but more importantly, we put them in wheelchairs. And I will tell you, you take two very elite athletes, you stick them in a wheelchair, and all of a sudden the playing field is equal for a lot of these young adults. I will share with you that these athletes have a really tough road. They over the years, it's not that I'm a crazy man, but I can tell you that I've walked up to people, young people that are in wheelchairs, and I ask them, have you ever thought about playing soccer? And I direct them into the power soccer, and it is probably some of the most rewarding refereeing that I've ever done in my life, because you see the competitiveness of them. But anyway, this is today. We stuck them in those wheelchairs, and I will tell you, the playing field was very leveled for them. So this was today, but it was. I will tell you, both Tomas and Cameron were just awesome. They came there and they made connections with the athletes that are in these wheelchairs, and the Sac Republic. If I'm not a paid advertiser, but I would absolutely support them for what they do. Their outreach to these athletes was tremendous, and these two young men that showed up were pretty great. So anyway, and that's my report.
Thank you very much. We'll roll into council member reports or committee reports. And I'm going to work my way out. So I'll start with Councilwoman Dowden Cavillo. Working my way out.
Oh, okay. I see. Okay. All right. Well, I don't have any committees to report this time, but I did want to talk about, just to give you a heads up, I had the opportunity to meet with the public affairs director for Union Pacific a couple weeks ago. Had a very good meeting about fire prevention efforts and vegetation clearing that needs to occur within the city of Auburn. I think there are 200 plus acres, maybe it's 400 plus. Our chief knows how many, 200 plus acres that the UP actually owns within the city limits that really require some cleanup to ensure that we have fire prevention for our neighborhoods and our businesses and so forth. My meeting went incredibly well. We met for several hours. Also had an opportunity to meet Tony Ambrosi, and I met with the manager for one of the engineering managers for UPR for United for the railroad as well. And he actually spent, I think, 6 or 7 hours with this particular individual, touring all the different properties throughout the city limits and talking about the priorities and what needs to be cleared first and so forth, and just the efforts and right-of-ways and access and so forth. So I came in, they had lunch at the firehouse. I came in and had the opportunity to meet with him as well. This particular individual, this manager, has his territory includes, I believe, Arizona and parts of Texas and California. So it's a huge, huge area, but he definitely gets it and is very committed to assisting us in our fire prevention efforts. And I know that Tony today met with the contractor, because there's a contractor who actually does the clearing, and that they will have boots on the ground this month. So we should see some progress on the vegetation clearing on UP lands as early as this month, but they are committed. Again, my meeting with the public affairs director went incredibly well. We are committed to having continual follow-ups and keep him apprised of what's going on so that we don't get stuck. We did have some progress, and then it just sort of stopped because the contractors changed and so forth. But I think we're on the right road, and we've got some great contacts and some people that are committed. Really, it's a matter of ensuring that the folks in Nebraska understand the significance of fire prevention efforts, because that's where the decisions are being made. The folks that are working in California and Arizona and Texas, they get it. It's really convincing the folks in Omaha. So, but we're getting there, and we'll continue to work. I will continue to do whatever I can to help facilitate that. But I just wanted to give folks a heads up that that's what's going on, and to expect some great things.
Great. Thank you very much for that report. We'll go with Vice Mayor Amara.
Thank you. Just briefly, I had a meeting, or DBA had a meeting, and they were already discussing Halloween. So anyway, they're on track, working hard, and that's the end of my report.
Thank you very much, Councilwoman Riddell Harris.
I don't have any meetings to report on, but I did want to say good luck to all the students out there that are starting school this week, because hopefully everything goes really well and everyone gets to stay in school this fall. So really excited about that. And then also I was hoping John could give us a little update on the library, the Carnegie Library. since we've been talking about that.
We have a inspector that's going to go in that we've already done the contract with them. I'll be honest with you, we actually went with the higher bid that came in, but we have an entire building inspection that's going to go in and give us a complete audit. And I'll check with John May, but I think they may be going in as early as this week. He was trying to schedule them, but it's in the works.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. And Councilmember Lamb.
Only one thing, and just to try to one up Councilwoman Amara, the Old Town Business Association met, and they are planning Christmas. So that is well underway. And I only joke, and I think I may have mentioned it at the last meeting, but the big discussion is it a country Christmas or a classic Christmas? Because those have been the past names of it over the years. And I think they've settled on Old Town Christmas. So a new name to it, but more to come on that. But that was a big discussion for them because that is a big revenue generator for them. And obviously they have been struggling with fundraisers over the years. So that was the main discussion point. So with that, let's talk about.
Great, thank you very much. I did have a SACOG Transportation Committee meeting on Thursday. Was emailing back and forth with Menjel about some potential grant funding opportunities. It was the Innovative Mobility Program that we got a report on. Seems like there might be some good opportunities for the city to request some funds to help our shuttle program down to the confluence. So we're all going to keep a close eye on that for potential grant funding. What's that? Yes,
On
exactly,
demand.
exactly.
Our Uber, city Uber.
Yeah, yeah, Auburn.
Auburn.
And we have EDC meeting tomorrow night, so I'll report on that at our next meeting. With that, I'll go ahead and. We look forward to it, Sally.
Oh, Mr. Mayor, we should probably announce that we're not going to actually have a meeting on August 23rd. Is that correct? Yeah. So our next meeting will be September, I'm looking to 13th. Yeah.
Amy's checking. Perfect.
Correct. No meeting on August 23rd, not planned at least. And we will come back September 13th.
Great.
Great. Thank you
so
very
folks-
much for the heads up.
Yep.
Appreciate it. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.